All right, it's going to be important for you to understand configuration. So let's talk about different configuration files and what their purposes are. All right, there are several different ways that these devices can actually store information. So one is RAM, using RAM. This is the same type of RAM that's in your computers and that you're used to hearing about. And this is the fast memory. This is the stuff that's pretty close to the processor. But the problem with it is that when you unplug the device, then you lose the information that is within RAM. Then you've got the NVRAM. This is the information that gets stored long term. And so if there's something that we want to store long term, then we store that in NVRAM. And then we have flash. And the flash is same thing. It's long-term memory. Now, in our devices, a lot of our devices nowadays, these are actually combined and you'll see the same information. So we also have different configuration files. So we make configuration changes on our devices. And when we make a change on that device that goes into RAM, and it goes into a file that is called the running configuration. So it is the running-config file, and that running-config file then stores that change, and it also uses that information in order to access it, to know what its configuration is at any given time. And then what will happen is if we want to save that, we would save that, and it gets saved to the startup-config file. And this startup-config file then will, when we load up the machine, then it'll get reloaded on there as well. So let me give an example. Let's say I change the host name of the device. So the device is named Switch, and I instead then call it Switch 2. And so I enter the command hostname Switch 2 to save it, or to put it, I hit enter, it goes into the running configuration. My prompt now from then on says Switch 2. If it were to be reset, then it would go back to just Switch, whatever was set before that. But if I save this running-config, and then that information that gets saved then gets moved to the startup-config. And so now it exists in both places. And so then if that device were to get restarted, it would load up this startup-config. It actually loads that startup config into RAM and then becomes the running-config. And so therefore, then you don't lose that information, that it keeps the host name Switch 2. Flash is usually where that iOS is installed, but quite often we see that iOS and the startup-config file get stored in the same location. So it's important to understand the difference between the running-config, which is the whatever current state that it's running with, those configurations, and the startup-config file, which is the long-term, I'm saving these settings, and how the two interact. When I do a save, it copies the information from the running config to the startup config, and then vice versa. When I restart that device, then the startup config gets loaded up into the RAM and becomes the running config. All right, so let's take a look at let's get onto the device and take a look at these different configuration files. So I'm on the switch here. I'm going to need to get into privilege exec mode to see some of this. So I get into privilege exec mode, and then I'm going to do a show flash. And when I do a show flash, I see all the directory listing for what is on flash. So I could actually just type in directory and it would show me the same thing because I'm in the directory right now. I can use my other commands to navigate the directories, like I can do a change directory and then change it to all these other different systems. And in here we see the flash. We also see the NVRAM, and we'll also talk about the system. We can see other items that we can access as well. So I'm not going to change directories at this point in time, but I can also see what's inside these directories without changing directories just by typing in dir, and then maybe I want to see what's inside NVRAM. So I type that out. and then I can see what's inside of the NVRAM. So I can, that would be non-volatile RAM. So I can see what's inside of these. I said we'd take a look at the systems. So let's take a look at dir system and take a look what's in there. And we see the default running config and the running config. So we see the running config right here. So that is the file or the what's inside of RAM, all of our configurations and how we're running currently. I can actually see what's inside of the running config by typing in show running dash config. So that is going to give me a view into what this running config looks like. So I'm going to hit enter and it's going to show me the start of this, and I can scroll through the rest of this, but I'm not going to for now. I do see that switch is right here. So let's play around with this a little bit. I'm going to change the host name of this. So I'm going to get in and say host name switch 2, hit enter. And then I will get back into show. We're going to show the running config. And now I see that the host name has switched to switch 2. So that change now made it to the running config. And I can see that as well as my prompt has changed as well. Now, if I take a look at the show startup config, I will see that it is still the original switch. It has not changed. And so right now, since that exists inside of RAM, but it does not exist inside of my non-volatile RAM or my flash, then what's going to happen is I'm going to lose that setting if I do a restart right now. So I need to save that. So there's a couple ways I can save this. I can do a copy running config, startup config, and that's going to copy it from the running configuration into the startup configuration. So then I hit enter with that. It's going to prompt me, are you sure you want to do that? Yes, I do. So it's saving that, and then I can do a show startup dash config, and I see now it is in the startup dash config, and so if I were to restart this device, it would then save that change. So I am good to go. It is saving that. All right. And then one other way that I can actually save that file is the write memory. So if I do a write memory, that will also go through the same process of saving that. Now, let's say I want to start fresh and I want to delete the startup-config. All I need to do is type in erase startup-config and then hit enter. And then it's going to prompt me, are you sure you want to do that? Yes, I do. I'm going to hit enter. And now it's going to erase that. Now it no longer exists in there. So that's going to be how you're going to save your files and settings and navigate to the different files. And so yeah, so that is the different configs and the different storage methods. Okay, one thing to note with this, because we say that the startup-config file is found in the NVRAM, but we also see this config.txt. If you take a look, these are actually the same file. They're 2305, so it's actually the same size of file, and it is the same file. So these reference each other. If you were to save something to the startup config, it is in fact saving it in the config.txt. When you erase this or remove it, then you are removing this config.txt and it no longer exists. So what you see in NVRAM and Flash are actually the same thing here. Thanks for watching my videos. If you like them, could you hit that like button? Because it really helps me out.